Okay, looks like we have gone live, and tonight is a session for Noble Sky with myself, Farhan, Anas, and I'm the head of marketing in Noble Sky International. So it's been a while since I last got on live actually, and the last time I think it was also with
There you go.
the lovely Miss Veronique. Yeah. So Veronique, how are you
Thank
doing tonight?
I'm very good, thank you. We had beautiful weather in Bali today.
Right, nice. Okay, so I think the topic tonight is very interesting. For those who have just started coming on and all that, welcome for joining us. It's a Monday night in Singapore right now. It's 9:30. I think most of Singapore is still working from home. A lot of us still working from home. So I think it's the Monday blues might not be as bad as how it used to be pre-COVID. Yeah.
I
So
don't know. I think it might be all day, all week blues. Do you get
all day, all
weekends
week.
that you work from home?
Yeah. You kind of like lose track of days, not
Yes,
knowing
exactly.
when the weekends are. Right. So Bali, how are things over there? Getting better or
Well, we seem to have more and more cases every day. Not a lot. I think I don't know. The population in Bali is about 5 million, I think, and we have about 2,000 confirmed cases. Half of them have
Mhm.
already recovered, according to their numbers. So it is getting better, but still, and we can't really go anywhere because the airport is pretty much closed. So that's okay.
Yeah,
It's all good.
sounds pretty similar to how Singapore is. I think in terms of number of population, we're about 5 million. Have been tuning in to Singapore news, a lot of our cases actually came in through the foreign workers in the dormitories and all that. I think because of the density,
Yeah.
but
Yes.
things are under control, and yeah, I think we've learned a lot from there and how we are better managing the situation.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so we have more people coming on tonight. So maybe Veronique, since we are starting on, and for those who have come on, welcome again. Would you like to just share a little bit about what you do in Noble Sky?
All right. So I have a background in finance in the first place. I used to be a fund manager, and I'm mostly the lead trainer for well, one
Right.
of the lead trainer along with Ralph, and I help train people, like teach people about different aspects. And I love working with Noble Sky because it allows me to add together all the personal development side, which I've been focusing on a lot in the past 10 years.
Mm,
I've been working, as you know, with Tony Robbins and a number of other people, as well as actually using all my finance background. So that's fun.
mm.
I enjoy
Sounds
that.
like a power packed combination, right?
I hope. Let's
Yeah.
see.
Right. I think yeah, I would have to agree. You being with us in Noble Sky has done a lot of good. I think we have benefited a lot from, especially like you mentioned, the mindset, the motivational training, how it helped us to see, beyond our own, limited
Mhm.
scope of things, and realizing that,
Yeah.
there's it's not just sometimes about what you do, but it's also about how you think and how you can actually get there and achieve it. And I think
Yeah.
and I think it's pretty much boils down to I mean, it applies to what we are talking about today about becoming about the $1 million, right? It's the million
Yeah.
dollar question is how do you become a millionaire, or do you
Hmm.
have $1 million? And this is something like, I think, in any society, in any economy, the whole idea of like being a millionaire is something that you really want to do, you really want to become, right?
Yeah. It
And it
seems
comes
to be
across,
something
yeah.
we all get in our mind, right?
Yeah, so I think tonight we may or may not discuss the mindset side of things, but I know
Yes.
we have some practical examples that you'll be sharing with us, and I think it's
Yeah.
people are going to be learning very simple, but the concepts are going to be really powerful in terms of like how we're going to get there.
Yeah.
So I think, especially like with your background in finance, I think you've seen the power of like how people put in their monies and make it grow from maybe a small amount into a huge amount. And then yeah, let's discuss some of the factors that goes into what makes it possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Happy
Right.
to.
Right.
Can you bring up our PowerPoint? Or
Yeah, sure.
sort of
Okay.
PowerPoint? 3
Let's.
slides or 6?
Yeah. All
All
right. Here
right.
we go. The big question.
Yes. Here's the first thing that comes to mind when I hear how can I make $1 million, which is that if you are making $5,000 a month, you will make $1 million in less than 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And this is
Okay.
something that people don't necessarily think about, right? It's like we actually make $1 million. We might spend it as well. That's the bigger problem sometimes for some people, right? But really, if you have this goal of making $1 million, it's really about how do you backtrack, right? So how do you
Mm-hmm.
work it out? So let's talk a little bit more first about what's going on with this. The first thing is it starts with awareness, and you say that about how we show
Yeah.
up in general, right? It starts about knowing what your current net worth is, and it's
Mm-hmm.
really simple. It's taking all your assets and taking out all your liabilities.
Okay.
And
That's
yes,
maybe just Veronica, you're gonna be explaining a little bit what assets are we
yes,
possibly looking at?
yes,
Yeah. Okay. Great.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Let me start with one thing. I mentioned that last week as well, but there's different ideas about assets and liabilities, and you would think, okay, I want to be an accountant and do it exactly right. But the shortcut to assets and liabilities is very simply assets put money in your pocket, and
Mm-hmm.
liabilities take money out of your pocket. So,
Right. Okay.
most common example, an apartment or a flat or a HDB in Singapore or a house,
Mm-hmm.
right? That should be an asset, right? But
Yes.
very often, for a lot of people, there's a liability against it, which is a mortgage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's
So
very
when
common in
you
Singapore.
calculate, exactly. So when you're calculating your net worth, you need to take your place that you live in or the place that
Mm-hmm.
you have and you rent minus everything that you owe on it,
Right. Okay.
right?
So which is, I think in most cases we are talking about mortgages, but
Mhm.
do we look at what are possibly other liabilities that we're talking about when it comes to
Oh,
maybe an apartment?
specifically, if I was to speak about your apartment, you might want to think
Mm.
about, in terms of liability, what taxes you have to pay on it,
Right. Okay.
everything that it costs you to have this asset,
The
and
maintenance. So are we talking about some maintenance costs and all?
maintenance costs. Yes, absolutely. But
Yeah. Okay.
there's
Great.
a bigger picture to this as well, which is that it's
Mm-hmm.
not just the place you live in; it's everything you have. So your
Yes.
net worth, all your assets, is going to be the car if you have one. I know in Singapore they're ridiculously expensive. The motorbike, the jewelry that you bought your wife. I hope you did. The all of that. That's an asset, right? But then there's a liability that you need to look at, and it could be some things like what you have to reimburse on loans, or like if you bought the car, what was the actual price? That's different, right?
Yeah.
Um, but it's also all the extra costs, right? All the monthly costs that you have, that kind of
Yeah.
comes into a liability because you cannot count on it being your work because you're going to spend it in
Yes.
that
I
specific case.
think in general in Singapore, especially a car is we won't really categorize that as an asset because there's always depreciation. By the time you sell, you're probably gonna get, I don't know, maybe 1/10 of the value of
Yeah,
what you actually paid
yes,
for.
but it's still
And of
sellable.
course, yep, it is. But then again, you imagine what you have already put in between, like maintenance costs and the petrol and all that. So I think, but of course, it comes with the intangible side of the convenience of having
Yes,
a car.
yeah,
Then yeah,
absolutely.
but yeah, yeah, okay, okay, right. So nice. So carry on, yeah, Veronica. Do share
Yeah,
with us.
so it's very simple, really. Take everything that you have and minus everything that you owe, if you think about it this way. And that will tell you, okay, what am I worth right now? And
Mm-hmm.
But the funny part is, a lot of people, I mean, and yes, property plays a big role in there. People are already millionaires that just don't realize they are.
Yeah, that's an
Right?
interesting way of looking at it. Yes.
Yeah. And the other thing that I was always what do you call it, fascinated by, and these are old stories. There was this book called Next Door Millionaire that talked about people that did not have expensive lifestyle, did not have lavish lifestyle, big houses or anything, or even had what would be considered as a really low paying job, like a school teacher, for instance. But when she passed on, she had retired and everything. When she passed on, she actually gave away several $1 million to the university.
Wow, how did that happen?
She saved money regularly,
Nice.
right?
And
And
it
not
couldn't
only
just
that,
be savings, right? Because I don't see myself saving up to $1 million just by
no,
saving.
it wasn't just by saving. Yes, so she not only saved it, she invested it properly. So we'll talk about
Nice.
this a lot more. But as I said, some of us, or most of us, have earned at least $1 million. I mean, I'm in my
Yeah.
50s, and I have definitely made more than $1 million in my work life.
Right. Nice. Nice. So I
Right?
guess it's the question of like, how do you have earned that $1 million and maybe grow from there and have this, like, this ability to maybe at this point in life to say that, look, I have this amount and it's
Mhm.
$1 million worth, and maybe I can
Well, the
materialize
other
this, or
the
realize
other
this and
thing
maybe
is,
give it.
I made it, but I don't have it. Right?
Okay, that
Because I
that tends,
spent some
tends to
of it
happen.
too.
Yeah.
Right? But that's life as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of how you start thinking about it, because people think, oh my God, $1 million, it's so big I can never get there. But that is
Yeah.
not entirely true. So I'm very interested in the knowledge industry, right? And if you
Mhm.
think about it, um, if I was to take sell a course to someone, and a lot of courses are like $997 or $497. So if all it would take for me to make $1 million would be to sell 2,000 courses,
Yeah. That's
right?
that's a
At
good way of breaking it down.
497,
Yeah.
right? So now if you look at it, you can actually reverse engineer a lot of things, and then it becomes something that is more like in the realm of possibilities.
Yes. 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 All
That
right.
makes sense.
Oh, what do you have here for us?
So this we talked about this yesterday, last time, and I just want to reiterate it really, really
Mhm.
quickly, because the one that we're super interested is the financial freedom jar. But when we budget, right, we need to think in advance about where we will put our money, because
Mhm.
that will allow us to create that $1 million. Right. So the 6 jars, one more time, because I want people to really know this one.
Mhm.
Necessities, everything you need for daily life, in general, about 50%. Financial freedom, this is what is going to be your $1 million. The $1 million is what you want your financial freedom account to get to, or more, way more if you can. Right. So this is the money that you will never, that you will never want to touch, but you want to live off the interest, basically, when you
Mhm.
retire. Right? Long-term savings. This is the money that you set aside to buy the car. Right? This is the money that
Yeah.
you set aside to buy things that you cannot buy in just 1 month.
Mhm.
Right? So some people might choose, okay, you know what? I'm not that interested in buying a car or having a lot of those expensive stuff, but I prefer to build my financial freedom faster. So I'm going to put 15% in financial freedom fund and 5% in long-term savings, and that's fine too. Then education, very, very important.
Mhm.
Playing, it's also very important, because when we feel like we are depriving ourselves, we end up spending silly money in the wrong place.
Yes, I
It's a
think that
bit
tends
like a
to
diet.
happen. I get it.
Kind
Yeah.
kind of the same idea, right? It's a bit like a diet. And then the last one is a gift jar. And we all understand the importance of being able to give and being generous to people. So I just wanted to put in these budgeting reminders so people are really aware what we are talking about today about the $1,000,000.
Yeah, very nice.
And this is one of my favorite quotes by Albert Einstein, and it's about compounding. And of course, everybody knows that Einstein was super clever and he invented so many things. But he said the most powerful force in the universe is the principle of compounding. So,
Is that
what,
right?
yeah, what does compounding mean?
Mm-hmm.
Are you ready for this? So, this
Uh,
is also the example we used last time. The question was, if you would you take if I offer you $1,000,000 now or one penny doubled every day for 30 days, what would you say? Without looking at the bottom part.
I've already looked at the bottom part,
Yeah,
but
I know we talked about it in the
yes,
past, right?
yes,
But
yes.
the thing about the compounding is you could see that it's slow to start because you're gonna
Mm-hmm.
go on the double, double, double. But then when you get to the far end of the calculations, this is where things start getting bigger and bigger and bigger and faster. And that's the power of the compounding. If
Mm-hmm.
I chose to say, okay, every time it goes to a certain level, I take the top off, then I will never benefit from my interest, having interest, having interest, having interest. Because that's really all we are talking about in the compounding,
Right. Yeah,
right?
I think it's the conceptually people think they understand this, but the actual, what it really means in the practical
Yes,
sense might
yes,
not be as simple, right? I think
yeah,
what you shared with us earlier about the 6 jars, it got me thinking as well. Like I've not been very disciplined myself about putting monies in the right proportions, but every time I go through this exercise and we go through this examples and I realize, okay, I need to be more disciplined and put this in, because then again we're looking at here 32 days, right?
yeah,
Compounding, if it doubles. So double will mean it's 100% increment every day, right?
yes.
Or
So
100% growth every day. Yeah,
that's just for example, right? For
yeah.
example
So
purposes.
in the practical sense, I think it's what people want to find out. Because
Yeah.
I'm thinking for myself, like, how do I even get there with the power of compounding? In the practical sense, so how do I be now? If I have the jars, I've put my money aside, for example, on a monthly basis. I put into my financial freedom account is what I need to put in for investment. But really, are you going to share with us like how we're going to
Yes.
get there,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
nice. Okay.
So there's actually this is the beauty of the world online these days. Just Google
Hey.
compounding interest, and I found this one, which is really simple, but it is so telling. So I'm gonna
Mhm.
switch screen for a second. So just bear
Sure.
with me while we do that, and I will show you what it means for real,
Okay. Wow, this
not
is
just
the exciting
$20.
part,
Yes,
right?
very exciting. So I hope you're ready.
Yeah. Get ready, everyone.
Uh, okay, get ready, everyone. So um, here's the idea that I went from to start with, right? I went from, okay,
Okay.
say I am making at the moment, I'm going to move this a little bit, but say I am earning $5,000 every month,
Mhm.
right? And with that $5,000, I'm going to be saving $1,000 every month,
Okay.
right? And this is my first year, so I'm saving it, I'm saving it. And after a year, I'm like, okay, now I'm ready. I put it out 5% per year. And 5% at the moment, for some people, they're going to say, oh, wow, that's already, quite high. But there are
Mhm.
ways, and there are things that you can do. There's many ways to generate interest. So let's say you make 5%, and we're still young. So let's say it's 30 years, right? But
Mhm.
remember, I'm still saving 1,000 per month, right?
Okay.
So I'm putting another 1,000 per month right here in my account every month.
Mhm.
So you ready? Let's have
All
a look
right.
what it says.
Drum
So
rolls.
after 30 years, you would be the proud owner of $890,000. And this is what I want you to look at is I'm just going to scroll not too fast, right? The first year, okay, deposits go up and everything. But as you start moving down the years, it gets faster and faster. It literally builds momentum.
Mm-hmm.
Can you
Wow.
see between year 25, you are at 639 to year 29 to year 30, you are at nearly 900. Right.
Wow. Okay.
So hang on. I think there you go. I have a beautiful chart as well. That's why I love this one. This one. Right. So pretty good. And you see here 5%, 5%, that's reasonable. When I
Mm-hmm.
started as a fund manager, the first thing I learned into, how you learn like back of the envelope calculations and things like that, is
Mm-hmm.
if your money makes you 15%, you will double, a little bit more than double. You will double your money in 5 years.
5 years. Wow.
Yeah,
That's fast.
that is fast, isn't it? So let's
Yeah.
let's change that for a second and let's do 15%. So you could
Mm-hmm.
say, see what it looks like. And now,
Wow.
instead of
$8 million.
5%, look at that. In 30 years, you've got $8 million, right? Just with $1,000 a month.
Mhm. And at which year did it cross the $1 million mark?
Yeah. So going across the $1 million mark with $1,000 a month at
Mhm.
15%, it will take you 16 and a half years.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that kind of answers the question of whether in our lifetime we can actually achieve
Yeah.
$1 million.
And that also
And
answers the question about how this lady left several $1 million
mhm.
to the endowment, to the university. Because every month she was putting money aside a little bit at a time,
Right, okay.
right?
This is
And it
really
compounded.
interesting for me.
And yes, there are,
Yeah, because
yes,
in terms of numbers, right? So I suppose the question will always be, where do I put in my money? Give me any kind of returns. Like here we mentioned about 5%, and there's you could, you could punch in any number. It could be 5, 10, 15, or,
I
or,
can
or
punch
even
in
more.
any number. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah.
And
So I think for most people, it's a matter of discipline, right? We have looked at the 6 jars, and if maybe for some people they might have this idea that $1,000 might be too much of a savings, maybe. But I think if we really were to drill down in terms of like really monitoring our expenses and all, we realize that maybe some things may not be a necessary expense, and they could actually go into financial freedom account.
yes, they could.
Yeah.
That is true. That is true. As long as you spend your play jar. It's really important to have
Yes.
the play. If you do not, I find that people get frustrated and then they just blow it. So the play jar, even if it's $1, you just need to spend the play jar.
Hmm. Okay,
Right.
I
But
gotta remind
there are
myself.
super focused people that do not blow it at all. That happens too. Now, of course, the question is, what can you get into that will generate this kind of returns?
Yes, that
Right.
is, I think, the big question.
Yeah, because if you look at the highest you can get, I just checked, I think it was Wells Fargo, on a 30-year bond, they offer 3% at the moment,
Oh, okay. So
right?
at 3%, right? So how
It's,
if can we run the numbers at 3%? What it
yeah,
looks like?
hang on a second.
Yay, okay.
Where did I go? Oh, there you are. Okay, so, oops, no, not
Not one.
153%. All right, so
It's not
3%.
mhm.
It's not so bad
Not too
over
bad.
30 years, you know, as long as you keep putting money in every month, right? Remember, you're not going from, okay, I invest 200,000 and I expect that. But we could look at that too. Let's do that for a second. Say you inherit some money, for instance,
Mhm,
right?
mhm. That could
And
happen.
it could happen. It's $100,000, and you're gonna know deposit, so we're going to make it 0.
Okay.
So you put it aside at 3% for 30 years. And the question is very simple. How much do I have at the end of the 30 years? Not that much.
Yeah, not that much. Yeah.
Not great.
Yeah, but I mean, if it's purely passive, just putting it aside for the number of years, right? So you're sort of like more than double.
Yeah, you more than double, absolutely. And you don't have to worry about it, right? Entirely passive, nothing else to do. So it still works, right? So but it's just what I love about doing that, it actually starts you thinking. So that's why I say, it's called the calculatorsite.com. And out of the ones that I've used, this is one of the simplest ones. So that's why. See, here you've got no capital changing, right? It's just the interest that's moving.
So if you were to add in at any point in time more capital, then the growth will be more exponential, right?
Yes. So for instance, let's play a little bit. So we're gonna add. We're not gonna withdraw any money, and we're gonna see if we can do. Oh, it just wants me to be monthly anyway. All right. So let's say if I say, okay, I'm gonna put in 1,000 every month, still, right? Because it's easy. So you have a good cushion to start with, and then you keep adding 1,000. It's still, you're making big progress, right?
Yeah, even at 3%, right?
Yeah, even at 3%.
Nice.
Of course, there's the other question. And I hate to tell you that, but the other question is, how much is cost of living going to go up by in between?
Yes. Okay.
Right? Is it going to make up 3%? Probably.
Yes. I think these are really things that we don't usually think about, because sometimes when I tell people like, hey, you got to start to think about investing, putting your money somewhere where it can grow above and beyond the inflation rate, right? But most people will be thinking like, I think my money is safe in the bank.
Yes.
It appears that way. I mean, your money is not being moved, it's safe, but little do they know the value of the money, the same amount of money, will probably be worth lesser, maybe even 1 year down the road or 2 years down the road. And that is a problem that people don't really understand or notice, right?
Yeah. And even, so I joke that because I've been looking at the market for a really, really long time. I've been through about 7 market crashes. Kind of, actually. But when we had the last big crisis, and certain European countries, such as, it's not, Greece was one of them, but one of them, Larnaca, whatever the name of the country is, people had €1 million in their account. Their accounts were, the banks closed down for a week, and when they got their accounts back, they only had 200,000 because the bank had taken the rest.
Wow.
Right. So that's the other thing to think about, and I think that's very relevant. Is not just compounding, but diversification. Sorry, French accent coming out. Right. So that's one of the reasons why I was so excited when I started learning about what we're doing with Noble Sky and investing in the US, which is something that I would never have done on my own. But because of the way we go and look at it, you can really use it to build wealth and to build wealth fast. Would you like to see how? I'm going to show you.
Yeah, of course.
So when we do flips, right, you remember what's the target that we have on the flips generally?
30% minimum.
Yes. Okay. Right. So I'm going to be very generous and say, okay, let's not say 30%, right? But let's say 25%. And I'm investing 100,000, and we're not going to put any more deposit. And let's say we're going to do this for 10 years.
So flipping for 10 years.
Every year we're flipping. I'm saying 25% because it takes everything into account and everything. So in 10 years, I'm nearly already at $1 million.
Wow. Starting from 100,000, right?
Just flipping. So that might mean that you're flipping 10 times or even 12 times, depending on sometimes, rehabs goes faster and everything. But just by doing that, look at how fast you can grow your money.
Wow, amazing. And
Uh-huh.
basically, yeah, because in the flipping side of things, some people may not truly understand flipping, what it really means. Maybe Veronica can just explain a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. So what we call flipping is we purchase properties at low prices. We really aim to get properties that are at substantial discount to the market price. Then we fix them up because generally, if they're cheap, they need fixing, right? So we do the rehab and then we sell them. So it's called flipping because you literally go in, fix, flip, go in, fix,
Mhm.
flip, and you keep doing it, right?
Like
And
pancakes.
yes, I have a lot of friends in the US that do it themselves, where literally they buy the
Yeah,
house, they go in and they fix everything. That's a lot of work. And
yeah,
for a lot of people, for a lot of Americans, it's not considered passive. In fact, it's super active. But on
yeah,
our side, that's actually much more passive because they do it all for us, right? We have the right teams. We have the right teams in the US that take care of everything. So all I have to do is put in the money, keep looking, of course, because you never
yeah.
leave things unsupervised, and just go ahead.
Yeah, I think naturally when people talk about investments, be it real estate or stocks or shares or even Bitcoin or anything, there's always the factor of risk, right? Here
Yes,
we're always talking about risk.
yes.
What would you, for someone who is, say, just a beginner, who's thinking about, wanting to be a millionaire in the next 20 years, maybe, what would be a vehicle that of choice, perhaps, that in terms maybe they should diversify? What should they get themselves into?
Oh, that's a tricky question. And remember, I am not a financial advisor
Yeah,
any
yeah.
longer. I used to, but I am not. Um, I would say diversify so you can sleep at night,
All right. Okay. That's a simple
right?
way of looking at it. Yeah.
Well, it's a simple way of looking at it. And yes, some people might think, well, in that case, I leave it in the bank because I can sleep at night. And yes, most likely, DBS will still be here in 30 years because you guys are blessed with a wonderful, nicely managed economy, right? Me being French, maybe my bank won't be there. And living in Indonesia, maybe it won't be there either. But having um, a reasonable diversification that you feel comfortable with, right? So the type of investments that we do with the flipping, for instance, funny enough, flipping actually fits in short term because
Right.
it's an
Okay.
investment that can be gotten back, where you can actually say, okay, I'm done after 2 years, and that still qualifies as short term.
hmm
Because me,
Yeah. I
with
mean, in a way, because you're
it's
actually
5 years.
buying the actual asset, right? Instead of
Yeah. Yes. This
it's.
is the thing. You're buying a hard asset. And if you're buying in the US, you have the land. Even if you don't have the house, there's no house on there. You have the land, and the land does belong to you, even if you're a foreigner,
Mm,
right?
that's a really, really nice touch. Yeah, that's the one thing which got me really interested in the
Yeah.
US
Yeah.
property side of things. Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. Let's just be honest with it, right? And
hmm
yes, sometimes the market goes up and down and everything. And at the moment, we're all over the place. None of us really knows where it's going. That's true.
hmm
But I just want to leave you with one thing with that. I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine who we're gonna bring on the show sometime soon.
Oh, nice,
And
exciting.
yes, and he said something. I went, interesting. So you know how everybody's like focusing on the unemployment rate,
hmm
right? 40 million people unemployed in the US or something like that. And he said to me, but you know what? There's still 160 million people that are employed,
Yeah.
that are moving,
Yeah.
that need
Yeah.
housing, and there's not as much housing available at the moment because a lot of people withdrew their properties as well. So I was like, I never thought about it this way.
hmm
So it's also a
Which
question of the right choices.
Yeah, I suppose. And I think that will also mean if you were to look at it in that perspective, you realize that actually we should potentially explain or possibly explain why we are not seeing that kind of market crash that people were thinking, right, that might happen in terms of real estate in the US. So some people are thinking like, oh, now is a bad time because it's going to crash. But this is unlike the crisis in when was it, 08, 09?
Yeah, but even in 08, 09, the crisis actually took quite a while before it actually happened. But that
Right.
is one of the reasons why, because there's a delay, right? And of
Mhm.
course, you have the forbearance and all of that.
Yes, yes.
So we really don't expect the prices to crash this
Mhm.
time. They probably will soften, but that one of the advantages of us always targeting a minimum of 30% return is that okay, maybe it will be 25%
Mhm. Yeah,
rather than
I
30.
think that makes a lot of sense.
But
Yeah.
that's really we will never purchase something that doesn't leave us at least that cushion of 30%.
Mhm. I think Veronica, before we started earlier on, you were sharing with me there was actually one other calculator which you had,
Yes,
which can show a reverse, right? I think,
yes.
the other question is like someone who has this idea of like, okay, so what do I need to start out with? Let's say now I only have a 20 years timeline for me to invest. What do I need to start out with if I want to
So
begin
let me
thinking
change
about $1 million?
share this one again.
Yay.
I'm getting more proficient. You'll be happy with me. I'm not that great on technology. All right. So this is a
Okay,
reverse
coming.
calculator. So
Aha. Okay,
if I want
catch
to
that,
have
guys.
$1 million in 20 years, and I
Mhm.
think that my money is going to make 5%, which is what we started with, you could say, okay, if I calculate it, I need to have 376,000 right now, right?
Right.
But if I was to go back and think, okay, I want $1 million in, well, let's go back to our previous calculation, right? So it was
Mhm.
10 years and 25%.
Yeah.
Recalculate. I only need to invest 107,000.
Wow. Okay, so it's not that huge a number. I think some people probably tuning in may have that kind of money already sitting in their bank accounts, and yeah, I think it's a question of what do you want to do with it to make it grow, right? So I think
Yes,
we've spoken about diversification and all that. I think that's very important. So yeah, so 107,000 in 10 years, right?
yes. I changed something.
Oh,
I said,
okay.
okay, if I have 15 years in front of me,
Mm-hmm.
look at what you should be investing. 35,000 only.
35,000. Wow. Okay. I think, in Singapore, I think I just want to touch on this a little bit because I've been discussing this with Ralph, and probably he might talk about this in the next session that we have. It's about the idea of asset progression versus, I do not know what's the other word, but to just acquire more properties. Okay, so
Mhm.
the idea in Singapore in general is that most people won't have enough to buy a second or third property. So
Yes,
the idea is always to for asset progression to happen is basically I sell my property now with some appreciation, right? So I have this amount of money and then I put it into the next property, which probably goes into, maybe I was in a HDB and then I would go into a condo, right? So this amount of money I put it into buying a condo, and then maybe a few years, 5, 10, 20 years down the road, there'll be another round of appreciation. And if I were to realize that amount of appreciation, that's or rather we spoke about net worth, right? So that's the amount of money I can have. But I think the issue which I've always thought about when I started working and all that, I was looking at my timeline,
mhm.
getting into marriage, getting into having family, and then house. So asset progression for me was not exactly um, very easy because of the fact that to get into buying a condo, for example, uh, because in Singapore, basically you need to have at least 20% down,
Yes,
right? So of course we have the privilege or not of using our CPF monies and all that. So
Mm-hmm.
minimally at 5% of the value of the property has to be in cash. So if you're talking about an average price of a condo at $1 million,
Mm-hmm.
5% in cash mainly would require $50,000.
Yes.
Right, so 5% of $1 million, and the other 15% will be maybe coming in from the CPF. Maybe.
Yeah.
But if you were to talk about cash, and some people maybe if you decide not to do an asset progression, but you decide to buy a second property, you probably need to fork out, and you can't get an 80% loan. It will be lesser than that, right? Because that's the MAS ruling here.
Yes.
For second property onwards, you won't be able to get an 80% loan. So most people, they try really hard to save for the down payment side of things,
Mm-hmm.
which could be 20% of $1 million is $200,000.
200,000.
Yeah. So if anyone who's on this journey thinking that, okay, I need to get this so that I can get myself into a property that can potentially give me more returns down the road, I would then ask them to look at the reverse engineer calculator, which you just shared, right? That amount of money, or just now we were looking at 15 years and starting from what, 35,000?
Yes, 35,000.
Yeah, we were looking at. So actually, if you want to make $1 million without buying into $1 million property, which is very risky, right? Because you do not know what's going to happen down the road, whether the property is going to appreciate or not. Because I think in Singapore, the rate of appreciation is there, but it's plateauing, and it's not as exciting as it used to be. I think with this, the idea is, I think, to start thinking about, if you put this money into buying a second property, or trying to save it up to sell off your property now and buy into another one, which locks your money into the property for many years, you might not get to that number that you want. Let's say we're talking about $1 million today. So whereas if we really look at the numbers, you might already be there to be able to start out on that journey of, like, even with $35,000, or with the other example we were looking at was about $100,000, to help you get to the million in a shorter period of time. So it's just a question of the right vehicle to choose.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's also other ways. One of the quotes that I've always heard was from Andrew Carnegie's, and he said that 90% of millionaires are made through property, through real estate.
Yeah.
Right. And it is true that real estate is a very important part, and it can be managed. And for people that have a little bit more money to put in the first place, because 200,000 is quite a large amount, and in the US with $200,000 you can get a really nice house, right? And if you start building a rental portfolio, you can start ramping up really quickly, and then you can grow your wealth quite exponentially, and grow it to the point where you start earning quite nice amount of money every month. That's the other thing.
Okay, yeah. Actually, I realized we didn't even get to touch on the topic of rental income and all that, right?
We'll talk about it another time, because
I realized that
we're having too much fun.
Too much fun, yeah. But what I'm really hoping is that people are actually getting some value from here, and then some, at least you realize that, wow, this is actually achievable. The $1 million question has been answered tonight, I hope. That just by looking at the number, just by looking at the numbers, and you realize that it is not too impossible. And then I think you're so right that maybe some people are already sitting on $1 million worth of assets.
Yeah,
they might not realize. It's just a question of, like, what you need to do with it to get there. So very nice. Okay, so in any case, I think being a Monday night and all, but I do see people are still on, which is great. I think this topic has been quite interesting, and so we don't want to drag this session for much longer. But if you do have questions while watching this video, whether live or the recorded version, just drop us any questions that you have in the comments. We'll be happy to just get back to you with some pointers, some tips. Especially if you have questions about investing, about US real estate, for sure we are there to to give you whatever we can, at least point you in the right direction, to help you get to your financial goals. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Great. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, Ralph just told us that for a second property, it's 25%, not even 20. So
Okay.
I just saw it flash across the screen. It's all good.
Oh, okay. Minimum cash for second property, 25%. Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. Make sure if you have questions, do reach out. Just drop a note, send us a message, and we'll be happy to help.
Yeah, Ralph will answer you.
Absolutely. He's not on screen, so he can answer.
Yeah. All right, so it's been really fun, Veronica. Thank you so much for sharing with us your vast knowledge on investments and that huge question, the big question about how to become a millionaire and how to get there. I think it's been really nice having you. So if no one else has any questions, I think we shall end off the session for tonight. Okay?
Thank you. Yep.
All right, so thank you, everyone. Yep. Say good night.
Take care.
See ya. Bye-bye.